Coworker keeps one-upping me. Now she stole my idea. Am I being petty if I confront her? All updates. So I, 29F, started a new job about 6 months ago, and up until recently I thought it was one of the best decisions I've made for my career. I'd been stuck in a toxic workplace before this, so landing here felt like a breath of fresh air. My boss, 40M, is supportive without being micromanaged. Why? The company actually values work-life balance. Wild concept, I know, and for the most part my coworkers are chill. Except for one. Let's call her Kelly, 31F. From literally day one, Kelly gave me weird vibes. At first I thought it was just me being overly sensitive in a new environment, but it became a pattern. If I mentioned something about my weekend, she'd instantly one-up it. Like, I casually told her I went jogging with a friend on Saturday, and she immediately jumped in with, "Oh, that's cute. I ran a half marathon without even training." Another time I brought in leftovers for lunch, pasta salad, nothing crazy, and she loudly announced, "Carbs? Wow, I could never. I meal prep all my food from scratch. It's way healthier." It was annoying but not enough to start drama over. I just shrugged it off as her personality type, you know, the kind of people who always need to be the most impressive person in the room? That's Kelly. But last week, things crossed a line. We had a team meeting about how to make our workflow more efficient. It was one of those brainstorming sessions where everyone throws out ideas. I'd been thinking for a while about how messy our project tracking system is, so I suggested a new workflow that would make deadlines clearer and reduce overlap. It wasn't groundbreaking, but people actually seemed excited about it. My boss even said, "That could really work. Let's flesh that out." I left the meeting on a high. Like, finally, I'd contributed something tangible and people valued it. The very next day, my boss pulled me aside in the hallway. He goes, "Hey, I was talking with Kelly, and she mentioned this really innovative idea for tracking projects. I think it could be a game changer." Then he described my idea. Word for word. And then, to make it worse, he brought it up in our next team meeting and publicly praised Kelly for her creativity. She just sat there smiling like she'd invented the internet. Didn't even glance my way. I was so caught off guard I didn't say anything. Part of me wanted to stand up and yell, "That was my idea," but another part of me panicked that I'd come across as petty or childish. So I just sat there, smiling tightly, while my idea got handed to her on a silver platter. Since then I've been stewing. I keep replaying the moment in my head. Did I mess up by not speaking up immediately? Do I let this go and hope it was a one-time thing? Or do I confront her and risk looking like the jealous coworker? What really worries me is the precedent. If she got away with it once, what's stopping her from doing it again? And what if my boss actually thinks she's the one driving innovation here? I've worked hard to prove myself in this new role, and I don't want to lose credibility because someone else is hijacking my work. On the flip side, I hate confrontation. I also don't want to be the person who runs to the boss crying about credit. In my head, I keep hearing that little voice saying, "Just keep your head down, it'll sort itself out." But will it? So Reddit, help me out here. Do I pull Kelly aside and call her out directly? Do I go to my boss and tell him the truth? Or do I play the long game and wait for her to eventually slip up? I'm trying to figure out if I'm overreacting. Or if this is the kind of thing that needs to be nipped in the bud before it spirals. Update. Hi again, Reddit. I wasn't planning to update so soon, but a lot has happened since I posted. Also, thank you to everyone who commented. I read so many responses and honestly, it felt validating to know I wasn't just imagining things or being petty. The overwhelming advice I got was, don't confront her emotionally, she'll twist it. Start documenting everything. If I really want proof, set a little trap. Well, I took your advice. Last week at lunch, I decided to float a fake idea in front of Kelly. Nothing too over the top, just something that sounded innovative on the surface but completely impractical if you thought about it for 2 seconds. I told her I was considering suggesting a new color-coded calendar system where deadlines would be assigned colors based on the employee instead of the project. Which makes zero sense because everyone works across multiple projects. It would just create rainbow chaos. Kelly's eyes lit up. She leaned across the table and said, "That's actually genius, Op. You should totally bring that up in our next meeting." I just shrugged and played it off like, it's probably dumb. I don't think it would work. She gave me this tight smile that basically screamed thank you for the freebie. Fast forward 2 days. We're in a meeting, and my boss says, Kelly brought me this really creative idea about using colors to streamline deadlines. Then he nods at her, and she launches into this whole pitch like she's solving world hunger. She was selling it, hands waving, voice confident, like she'd been up all night developing this system. At first, I panicked. I thought, holy crap, what if he actually likes this nonsense? But as she kept explaining, I saw my boss's eyebrows furrow. He let her talk for a few minutes, then finally interrupted and said, I don't think that would scale well. It sounds like it would create more confusion than clarity. The silence after that was golden. Kelly's face turned red, and she stammered, well, maybe it just needs some fine-tuning. My boss nodded politely, then immediately moved on to another topic. I swear I almost had to bite my tongue to keep from grinning. So yeah. The trap worked. She exposed herself as an idea thief, and the boss wasn't impressed. But here's the thing, as satisfying as that moment was, I don't think it's enough. Because what if next time she steals one of my actual good ideas and spins it just enough to make it work? Then she gets credit again, and I'm back at square one. That's where I'm stuck. A lot of you said to start a paper trail, and I'm definitely going to do that now, sending recap emails after meetings, CCing the team when I share suggestions, stuff like that. But part of me wonders if I should be more direct. Like, do I go to my boss and say, hey, just so you know, that calendar thing wasn't actually Kelly's first idea to bring up? Or do I pull Kelly aside and let her know I'm onto her? I'm scared of coming across as the dramatic one. She's got that slick confidence that makes people believe her, and I'm worried that if I confront her without evidence, she'll spin it into me being jealous or trying to undermine her. At the same time, if I do nothing, this might just keep happening. So Reddit, what's my next move here? Stick with documenting and hope she eventually buries herself? Or be upfront and risk the fallout? Update number 2. Hi Reddit, back again. Didn't think this saga would keep going, but it did. Buckle up. After my last update, I decided to follow the most common advice I got: document, document, document. Every time I had an idea in a meeting, I'd follow up with a quick email recap to my boss and sometimes the whole team. Nothing dramatic, just, hey, for today's meeting, here's what I suggested about X. Let me know if you'd like me to start drafting it. That way there was a clear paper trail. At first, things were pretty quiet. Callie seemed embarrassed after the whole color-coded chaos calendar flop, and she kept her head down for a week or so. I almost thought maybe she'd learned her lesson. Spoiler, she hadn't. About 2 weeks later, we were brainstorming ideas for improving client onboarding. I shared a detailed suggestion in the meeting, then immediately sent my recap email afterwards. The next day, my boss CC'd me in an email thread praising Kelly's fantastic onboarding idea. My exact words, just copy-pasted into her pitch. I was livid. I didn't confront her directly, I'm not great at face-to-face conflict, but I replied all with, thanks, glad you liked it. This is the same process I mentioned in yesterday's meeting, I can start a draft doc. I thought that was subtle enough to get the point across without starting drama. Apparently, Kelly didn't take it that way. Later that afternoon, she cornered me in the break room and hissed, what was that? You trying to make me look stupid? I just blinked and said, I just wanted to clarify where the idea came from, that's all. She rolled her eyes and muttered something like, you're obsessed with credit, it's pathetic. Then she stormed out. 2 days later, I got an email from HR. Kelly has raised a concern about team dynamics. We'd like you to come in and chat. My stomach dropped. I walked into that meeting convinced I was about to be painted as the problem employee. But as soon as I sat down, the HR rep asked me to explain my perspective. I pulled out my email printouts, thanks, Reddit, and laid them out. I showed how every single idea I'd pitched was followed by a recap email. And then how Kelly repeated those ideas later as her own. The HR rep's face changed about halfway through. She went from neutral smile to oh no. She thanked me for bringing in documentation and said it was very helpful. I left feeling shaky but a little hopeful. Later that day, my boss asked me to step into his office. My heart was racing, but instead of bad news, he said, I had a chat with HR. I appreciate how you've been handling things professionally. Keep doing what you're doing. That was it. Short and sweet, but enough to make me feel like I wasn't crazy. Here's where it gets messy, though. Kelly is furious. I don't know what HR said to her, but she's been cold as ice since then. Snide comments under her breath, exaggerated sighs when I talk in meetings, that kind of thing. Yesterday, I walked into the kitchen to grab coffee, and she muttered, "Careful, I might steal your sugar idea." Loud enough for people to hear. I'm trying so hard not to engage. Everyone else on the team has been normal with me, and I think some of them are starting to notice her behavior on their own. But it's exhausting to constantly be on guard. So now I'm at a crossroads. Do I keep my head down and let her dig her own grave? Or do I set one final, undeniable trap that shows everyone exactly what she's doing? I'm not usually the petty type, but after weeks of this, I kind of want her to embarrass herself. Update number 3, final. Okay, Reddit, this is, hopefully, the last chapter in the Kelly saga. And yes, I went a little petty. After my last update, I kept up the paper trail. Honestly, that alone was working. My boss was starting to credit me more often, and a couple coworkers even came to me directly to ask about projects instead of looping Kelly in. It felt like people were noticing the pattern without me having to say much. But Kelly wasn't letting it go. She kept throwing little digs in meetings, rolling her eyes, making jokes about how I was territorial over ideas. Classic projection. I was biting my tongue daily. Then last week, inspiration struck. I remembered how well the color-coded calendar trap worked, and I decided, why not one more? At lunch, I casually mentioned I'd been thinking about a new system where we'd rotate project leads based on zodiac signs. Like, if you're an Aries, you get Q1 projects because you're driven, and if you're a Libra, you handle client onboarding because you're balanced. I said it in a totally serious tone but added, obviously it's just a random thought, probably silly. Kelly's eyes lit up. No, that's actually really interesting, she said. I nearly choked on my sandwich. Fast forward to our Monday team meeting. My boss asks if anyone has new ideas. Kelly clears her throat dramatically and launches into a passionate pitch about astrology-based project management. I swear on my life, she actually said, we could really align people's strengths with the cosmos. The room went dead silent. My boss blinked a few times and then looked directly at me. Didn't you mention something like this at lunch? I froze for a second, then managed, oh, that? Yeah, I was joking about it. I didn't think anyone would take it seriously. Everyone burst out laughing. Like, full-on belly laughs. Kelly went beet red and tried to backpedal, saying, well, obviously I meant it as, a metaphorical thing. But the damage was done. After the meeting, one of my coworkers actually came up to me and whispered, that was brutal. She totally played herself. Even my boss gave me a little smirk in the hallway. Since then, Kelly has been quiet. Like, eerily quiet. She's stopped throwing digs, stopped trying to one-up me, and mostly just keeps her head down. I don't know if HR had another talk with her, or if she's just embarrassed, but the vibe has completely shifted. Do I feel a little bad? Maybe. Was it satisfying to watch her finally crash and burn? Absolutely. The truth is, I didn't need to go the petty route, the documentation alone was enough. But after weeks of her nonsense, it felt like reclaiming a little bit of power. And it worked. I feel like I can finally breathe again at work. So yeah. Lesson learned, trust your instincts, document your contributions, and sometimes, a little bit of pettiness doesn't hurt. Thanks, Reddit, for pushing me to stand up for myself.